All right, ladies and gentlemen, time for lesson 4.6, multiplying decimal numbers. Your I can statement, I can multiply decimal numbers. So go ahead and write that down. We're going to get started. So let's do a little quick review. We learned in lesson 4.1 that if we take $3.45 and we multiply it by 10, we're going to end up shifting that decimal place one spot to the right. Just remember that the number of zeros on the number you're multiplying by here tell you how many places you need to shift that to the right, okay? So here I've got 100, I've got 2 zeros. That means I've got to move that decimal place 2 places to the right. Here I've got 1,000. That means I've got 3 zeros. I've got to go 1, 2, 3 places to the right. If we had a number that ended in 100 zeros, we have to move it 100 places to the right, but thankfully we don't have to do that, okay? So how do you multiply decimal numbers? Well, this is one area I noticed on your pretest that we struggle a little bit, but the good news is with a few simple steps, I think most of you are going to have no problem with this, all right? So let's look at these 3 steps. Step 1, you're going to forget about the decimals and just solve the problem. Pretend they're not even there. La, 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 can't see them. Okay, so step 2, count the number of places after the decimal in the original problem, or decimals. Starting at the end of the product, remember that's the answer for your multiplication problem, count back to the left that number of spaces and put the decimal point in. Okay. Now I would like you to copy these steps into your math notebook, so you'll need to pause here and get all this copied in, and then when you're ready, press play and we'll move on. Okay. So let's look at this problem here. It says Ethan buys 9 gumballs for 5 cents each. How much does he spend? Now I'm going to guess the vast majority of you can look at that and say that's 45 cents. But let's look at applying those 3 steps that we just talked about. Okay. So we've got 9 times 5 cents. So you're going to forget about the decimals altogether and you're going to solve the problem. So I got 9 times 5, which is 45. Now I'm going to count the number of places after the decimals in the original problem. So here's the original problem. I've got 1, 2 places after the decimal point. Okay. So now I'm going to start at the end of the product and I'm going to count back to the left that number of spaces. So I'm going to start way down here at the end. I'm going to start after the 5 and I'm going to go to the left working backwards. So I'm going to go 1, 2 spaces and I'm going to drop my decimal point in. We'll just throw a 0 in there. So that ends up being a dollar sign. That ends up being 45 cents. Now if it wasn't money, it would be 45 hundredths, just like we talked about before when we looked at fractions and decimals before. Okay. So let's look at another one. Let's say I've got 7 tenths times 6 hundredths. Okay. So step 1, I'm going to forget about the decimals and solve. So I know that 7 times 6 is 42. Step 2, I'm going to count the number of places after the decimal or decimals, and since both of these are decimal numbers in the original problems, I'm going to underline those. Those are my decimal places. I've got a total of 1, 2, 3 spots. Step 3, I'm going to start at the end of the product, way down here at the right after the 2, and I'm going to count back 1, 2, 3 spots. Now what I have to remember when I look at this is I'm going to have to put a number in here as a placeholder. And hopefully remember right now that that's a 0 we're going to put in there. Then we're going to put in our decimal point. And so we end up with, and I'm not sure why there's a dollar sign there, pretend that's not there, but we end up with 42 thousandths is our answer because there were 3 decimal places we worked back from. Okay? All right. So let's look at the next one. So again, we're just going to forget all about the decimals and we're just going to multiply. Okay, so I do 5 times 7 is 35. I carry my 3. 5 times 1 is 5 plus 3 is 8. Put down a 0 because now I'm multiplying by the tens place. 3 times 7 is 21. Carry the 2. 3 times 1 is 3 and 1 is 5. And when I add that up, I get 5, 9, and 5. So 595. Step 2, I'm going to count those decimals places in the original problem. So I've got them here. I've got a total of 1, 2, 3, 4 places, decimal places that I'm going to have to work back from. So step 3, I'm going to take a look at the product or the answer. I'm going to start after the last 5 here. I'm going to work back 1, 2, 3, 4 spots. Looks like I need that 0 as a placeholder again. Then I'll put in my decimal number. And now my answer is 595 10,000ths. We didn't even go out that far before when we looked at those places, but that's where we end up with our answer there. Okay? So, again, I have a dollar sign. Not sure why that keeps showing up, but let's just pretend that it's 5 cents, I guess. Just pretend the dollar sign's not there. Sorry about that. Okay, so now you are going to choose a method and solve. No, you're just going to solve these problems. Okay? Again, that should just say solve. Apologize for that. So go ahead and solve those 4 problems there. If you need to go back up and look at some of the slides where I worked through those 3 steps, you can certainly copy these problems first, back up and do that. And then here is your guiding question to think about. Okay, How do you know where to place the decimal point in your products and then create a problem of your own for your classmates to solve? And after you got that figured out, hopefully you feel like, all's going well. And we'll see you soon.